For tonight's news report, we'll be focusing on the continued ethnic conflict that has erupted in the country of Rwanda for the past few decades, including the Rwandan Civil War and the Rwandan Genocide. I'm your host, Bahl. Piyush Kumar, one of our reporters stationed in Africa, is here to explain what has happened. Mr. Kumar, what seems to have led up to these truly horrific events?
Well, Mr. Bahl, this all started during Rwanda's colonial period after World War I, when the country was under Belgium's control. During Belgium's colonialism of Rwanda, the ruling colonizers favored the Tutsi minority over the Hutu majority. This ethnocentrism resulted in immense tension between the two ethnic groups even before Rwanda gained its independence. Due to the better treatment the Tutsis received, the Hutus were enraged and eventually felt the urge to take action. This led into the Hutu Revolution of 1959, where 330,000 Tutsis were forced to flee the country and sought asylum in neighboring countries, most notably Burundi and Uganda, making them have an even smaller presence in Rwanda. By early 1961, Hutus had forced the Tutsi monarch into exile and declared the country a republic. This continued as Belgium granted independence to Rwanda in 1962, and ethnic violence continued for years. By 1973, a military group installed the Hutu Major General Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, who ruled over the country for nearly 2 decades. But conflict continued to worsen. In 1990, the Tutsi Rwandan Patriotic Front invaded northeast Rwanda from Uganda. This later resulted in the Rwandan Civil War between the two ethnic groups in October of 1990.
Truly a tale filled with unrest and continued back and forth conflict. It seems that such a little difference in ethnicity can be such a strong central focal force that truly divides a nation. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Kumar. Next, we'll introduce Louisa, a prominent historian and analyst, to tell you more about the truly grueling horrors that have taken place in the country. Welcome, Ms. Xu.
Glad to be here, Yang. So in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, the Hutu people murdered as many as between 500,000 to 662,000 Tutsi people. The Tutsi people were mostly killed in their own homes and villages and hunted down by the Hutu militia bearing machetes and rifles. Sexual violence was also common in this period, with more than 400,000 women being raped during this ethnic cleansing. An example of the violent acts committed in this event were roadblocks that they set up in the streets. Any Tutsi person passing such roadblocks were immediately killed. However, a majority of the killings were done by ordinary Hutu people, who knew best where their Tutsi neighbors were. The already existing culture of compliance to authority within the Hutu people meant ordinary citizens were easily manipulated by authorities into killing the Tutsi people. There are many memorial centers in Rwanda, for example the Nyamata Memorial Center, in which more than 50,000 remains are buried there.
What a truly horrifying story. It was certainly a terrible time to be a Tutsi in Rwanda, seeing the terrible effects of this genocide. Well, thank you for being here, Ms. Xu. Joining us now is United Nations Assistant Mission for Rwanda Representative Wang. Good evening, Mr. Wang.
Good evening, Mr. Bahl. Good to be with you tonight.
So you were directly involved in the negotiations between the Tutsi Rwandan Patriotic Front and Hutu Rwandan Armed Forces, and have seen the true horrors of the humanitarian crisis in the country. As we all know, although the war has already ended, the lasting impacts hover over the people for many years. Could you please explain the major impacts of this war?
Of course, Yang. So, on the surface, this war was fought over much of the country, which led to a lot of destruction in infrastructure. And furthermore, this war caused millions of Rwandans to be displaced and thousands to be killed. However, under the surface, there are much more significant impacts because of this war. First, it led to the First Congo War, also known as Africa's First World War. And this war caused 250,000 deaths. Furthermore, more than 500,000 Tutsis were murdered in the Rwandan genocide, and many who were not killed lost numerous family members. This also led to thousands of orphans after parents were killed in the war and genocide. Finally, many women were sexually assaulted in the war, which has its own long-term impacts on those women.
Yes. Like most civil wars, the country was extremely shaken after this one, and a whole generation of Rwandans struggled with even surviving through the political unrest. Mr. Wang, thanks for your time and your perspective on this conflict.
Thank you, Yang. Glad to be here.
It is clear that Rwandan's horrifying genocide has left its scars on the country and its people. Today, Rwanda is one of the least developed countries in the world. Even though decades have passed since the genocide, the country is still in the second stage of the demographic and epidemiological transition, meaning most of its citizens live in rural areas and practice subsistence agriculture. The country is struggling with inequality, and millions of people in Rwanda are living below the poverty line. All metrics for the nation's development show, well, a lack of it, with the country being ranked as one of the least developed countries in the world.
We visited one of the darkest pages of African history in the 20th century and have seen the grueling horrors of the Rwandan genocide and the absolutely despicable actions against the Tutsi people. The tragic mistakes that caused this pain and suffering for millions of Rwandans should be a lesson for all of us. We pray for those who lost their lives in this genocide. If you like what we do here, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.